Cecil Healy is one of the great forgotten figures of Australian sport. He died on the Somme during the First World War, the only Australian Olympic gold medalist to be killed in action. He was also the man behind one of the greatest acts of sportsmanship in Olympic history. Now his story's being revived by another Olympic great, John Devitt. He's undertaken a pilgrimage to Britain and France to find out more about Cecil Healy's extraordinary life and wartime service. Europe correspondent Steve Kinane reports.
He was an extraordinary guy. He was a champion. He was a true sportsman. He was fair. He was a sensitive man and a deep thinker. I have come to believe that he led one of the great Australian lives.
Cecil Healy won gold in the 4x200 metres at the 1912 Stockholm Olympics. John Devitt won gold in the same race 44 years later. A golden boy of Australian swimming in the 50s and 60s, John is now on a crusade to resurrect the story of a forgotten hero.
He's one of the top heroes I've got. He is someone that Australia should remember with more prominence, and as an example of what young blokes who can do go out and have a crack at it.
This rare vision shows John Devitt with Australia's first swimming gold medalist, Freddie Lane. It was Freddie who told John about the remarkable Cecil Healy. The Olympic champion is now working on a book with the author, Larry Writer.
Reading these letters and in their own words, it's like a time machine. It takes you back there.
The pair has been travelling through the UK and Europe, finding out more about Cecil Healy's war record and his great act of sportsmanship at the Stockholm Olympics.
There's one of the great sporting rivalries between Cecil and Duke Kahanamoku, the Hawaiian surfer, who was also, unknown by many people, a wonderful sprinter, swimming sprinter. And the Duke arrived at the Stockholm Games. Word had started to get out that he was something very special.
When they had the heats, everything was fine. By then he knew he wouldn't have won it because the Duke was that much better. Then they went to the semi-finals and the Americans didn't turn up for the event. There's about 15 different versions of why. I just think they screwed it up in the third and didn't get there in time.
The judges disqualified the Duke. He was not allowed to swim in the Olympic final. Many of his rivals were overjoyed, but not the Australian.
Cecil said, look, I don't think that's fair. I think he should be given the chance to race, even though he's going to beat me. And I think it was to Cecil's credit that he thought, so I win a gold medal. It will always bother me that the best swimmer wasn't there.
Cecil asked the Australian team to put a protest in on behalf of the American. The Duke was eventually allowed to swim and ended up winning gold. Cecil got the silver.
He came across and lifted up Cecil's arm and said, "This is the true Olympic champion."
It was the beginning of a friendship that would have a lasting impact on Australian culture. This statue depicts the moment when the Duke first surfed in Australia. He had been invited to Sydney in 1914 by Cecil.
People came from everywhere to see him, and they said this bronze god riding a surfboard, it looked like someone on a chariot. It was that graceful and awesome. When he left, all of a sudden surfing was all over the beaches.
Within months of the Duke's landmark trip, the Anzac stormed the beaches at Gallipoli. Cecil Healy enlisted in the army soon after. He started out as a quartermaster, but felt compelled to do his bit on the front line.
He felt that he simply couldn't continue doing such a safe and cushy job, so he applied to become an officer.
As he completed his officer training in the UK, he wrote foreboding letters home to his mates.
I am prepared for the worst and am quite resigned to my fate. I cherish the hope that I will be able to sell my life dearly and earn the respect of the men whom I command. If the unexpected happens and I'm spared to return, We must dispose of a drop of the cup that cheers together, old chap. Meantime, yours, Cecil.
Cecil never made it back.
It was in this French field near Peronne where Cecil Healy was killed just 74 days before the end of World War I. He was leading his platoon as they were clearing out German machine gun posts when he was shot in the head and chest.
After Healy was killed on the afternoon of the 29th, the Germans actually abandoned all these positions.
John and Larry have come to the Somme with battlefield guide David Wilson to retrace Cecil's final steps as his battalion advanced towards Mont St Quentin.
What we've learned since we've come here is that he was probably blindsided and shot from ticker copse.
Just to stand here and look across the field and see where the vision of fire was, these guys were never going to make it.
Cecil Healy's death was mourned at home and on the front line. Former Wallaby captain Major Sid Middleton, who was once his commanding officer, wrote, "By Healy's death, the world loses one of its greatest champions, one of its best men. Today, in the 4 years I have been at the front, I wept for the first time." Before he returns to Australia, John Devitt has come to Cecil's grave in Asvilla to pay his respects. He's brought some sand from Manly, Cecil's old home beach in Sydney.
We decided that we would bring a little bit of Manly, and we mixed it with some of the dirt that was around his grave now. So he's got both, a relationship between Manly and his grave.
For John, it's been an emotional pilgrimage to the gravesite of a man he feels a deep connection with.
Well, it's been a long journey, and I'm here today, wonderful moment. I've come together with Cecil Healy. I'm so thrilled.